Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. When the for sale sign went up across the street, I didn't think much of it at first. Houses in our quiet suburban neighborhood don't come on the market too often, so I figured it was just a normal family moving on to bigger and better things. Boy, was I wrong. The new neighbors turned out to be a nightmare from the moment they moved in. It started small. This woman, who I'll call Karen, complaining about where I parked on the street, or telling me to keep it down if I was working in the garage with the door open. I tried to be polite and accommodate her requests at first, even though they seemed pretty unreasonable. After a few months of living there, Karen started getting more and more demanding. She would bang on my door at all hours, complaining about my dogs barking when they were just playing in the backyard. She left nasty notes on my car about leaving for work too early in the morning. She even called the homeowners associations on me just because my grass was slightly too long when I went on vacation. I started avoiding Karen as much as possible. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, worried she would flip out over the smallest thing. My neighbors on the other side said they were having issues with her too. We swapped Karen horror stories and tried to ignore her increasing crazy behavior. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon when I was grilling burgers in my backyard. Karen stormed over to my fence and started yelling at me to turn the music down. I politely explained that I didn't have any music on, just enjoying the nice weather. This set her off even more, screaming about how inconsiderate I was, and how I was ruining her son's weekend with my loud behavior. That's when she dropped the big bombshell. Her son deserved to have a huge in-ground pool built on my property so he could enjoy his weekends. She informed me that I would need to sell her my house immediately so they could tear it down and build the pool. I was so shocked I didn't even know how to respond at first. Was this woman seriously demanding I sell her my house so she could build a pool? The audacity was unbelievable. Once I composed myself, I told Karen in no uncertain terms that my house was absolutely not for sale. She kept ranting about how her son needed a pool and no other yard in the neighborhood was big enough. I finally had to go inside and lock the door just to get away from her. Over the next few weeks, the harassment escalated. Karen showed up at my door several more times demanding I sell to her. She had flyers printed up that she put on all my neighbors' doors saying I refused to sell to her poor son. She even had a petition going around claiming I was blocking necessary neighborhood improvements by not allowing the pool construction. I started keeping records of all Karen's antics and made copies of the crazy flyers. I wasn't sure if I would need evidence to get a restraining order, but her behavior was really frightening. The final straw came when I arrived home after work one day to find Karen in my backyard with a survey team, staking out where she wanted the pool built. I immediately called the police while ordering the men off my property. The cops came and had to physically escort Karen back to her house, though she was still shouting about how I was denying her son. The police report and stack of documentation I had on Karen's harassment paid off. I was able to get a restraining order that prevented her from contacting me or coming on my property. Karen also got slapped with fines from the homeowners associations for her illegal survey and unauthorized encroaching on my land. The victory was short-lived, though, as Karen and her family moved a few weeks later. I don't know if the homeowners association's fines or restraining order motivated their quick exit, but I was glad to see them go. The new neighbors keep to themselves, though I did warn them about Karen in case she tries any of her crazy antics on them. After my nightmare experience with that entitled woman, I appreciate my normal, peaceful neighborhood more than ever, and I'm now hyper-vigilant about any new for sale signs going up nearby. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Several years ago, my friend, we'll call him Boris, and I would always help each other with spring cleanup for our properties. This included removing damaged trees, preparing garden plots, and taking care of our weed-infested yards. I was going to be the first on the cleanup detail, so I prepared tools and implements the Friday before the big cleanup was to happen. I sharpened tools and chainsaw chains, the lawnmower blade, and just got everything in order. Among those tasks was mixing oil with 2-cycle oil. I finished up kind of late and generally put things away for the next day. The next morning, Boris showed up with coffee and biscuits around 8 a.m. As we were sitting on his tailgate enjoying breakfast, my neighbors rode by in their beat-up Chevy Cavalier, smoking like a freight train. We'll call them Rocky and Bullwinkle. Boris and I made the usual jokes about the amount of smoke pouring from the exhaust. Damn, bet they go to the gas station and fill up with oil and check the gas. We soon finished breakfast and thought no more about it. As we began to get the tools laid out and hatch out a plan of attack, I could not find my gas cans. No mixed gas, regular gas, or a gas can in general. That's when it dawned on us why the car Rocky and Bullwinkle were driving was smoking so badly. I was pissed, to say the least. Well, all Boris and I could do was go shopping for gas cans, gas, and more two-cycle oil. After we returned, we saw Rocky and Bullwinkle pass by several times, but all in all, we got a lot done. The next weekend, we dedicated to cleanup at Boris's. A weekend or two went by, and we had a family dinner at my wife's grandparents', Rocky and Bullwinkle's. Toward the latter part of the evening, we were having a few drinks. Most people had left, and myself and my wife's grandfather were shooting the breeze when I had to take a leak. As I was doing so, I saw a gas can with very distinct paint on it. I inquired from the old man about how it came into his possession, and he stated Rocky and Bullwinkle left it there. I simply explained it was mine, as was another, and loaded them into my truck. It ate at me every time that POS car with my post neighbors went by, so I hatched a plan from a rotten egg. I went and bought a few gallons of gas, a few gallons of diesel fuel, and some other various oils. I made a concoction of these different chemicals, and filled my new 6-gallon gas can I had to purchase. With some clean gas, I filled the lawnmower and cut some grass that evening, making sure Rocky and Bullwinkle saw me. Then I put everything away but forgot and left that rotten egg gas can out. I got up and went to work the next morning and didn't even think to check on the can. But when I got home, I checked and it was gone. My wife informed me that my plan must have worked, as she watched Rocky and Bullwinkle go in and out with the car, not only smoking but spitting and sputtering as well. The last time they rode out, they didn't ride back in. They gave me about an hour of peace before they came over and wanted to know if I could look at the car and see what was wrong. If it could not be fixed on the side of the road, maybe tow it home. My response? I've had a long day and have a migraine, maybe tomorrow. I saw the panic set in when I told them that. That's when they told me they had no insurance and it was on a main road. Tough luck. So the highway patrol did run across it and had it towed. It was going to cost them around $500 to get it out of impound. Plus they had to have current registration and insurance. The car wasn't worth it. Well, they're those types of people that good luck just falls on them, and the pastor for a local church gave them an old Ford Taurus. It took me a few cans of rotten egg gas, but I got the motor to lock up after about a month. This time it quit in their grandparents' yard. So they scrapped it, and as luck would have it, they got their income tax returns. They bought a nice-looking Ford F-150, but it began having problems too. It smoked really bad. They did take it to a mechanic who eventually found the problem. He got the truck running right again for about $1,500, and I have never had any more gas come up missing. The next one is a petty revenge story. In my mid-20s, early 2010s, I was looking for a used moped. I found one on an online marketplace. The seller didn't want me to go to him, so he met me at my apartment complex. It was a really big apartment complex, so he wouldn't know where I actually lived. He pulls the moped out of the back of his truck and 2-3 pieces literally fall off of it. It had a flat tire, so I couldn't test ride it. At that point, I'm out. He starts yelling at me about how I'm a time waster and how I should pay for his gas. I tell him off as I'm walking away, and that was that. Except he kept calling and texting me talking crap. I gotta admit, it got quite juvenile between us. Part of me was like, just block this fool and be done. But the petty part of me kind of liked watching him squirm because I was dropping rhetorical elbows on him. Pretty much all of his insults were something about me being gay and liking gay sex. I'm straight, and my then GF was with me when I met up with him. So after a while I start feeding into it, except I turned it around about his mom being a dude and me being her top. I told you, very sophomoric and depraved. Think like South Park type of dialogue. After a particularly brutal exchange, he stopped and I thought it might finally be over. The next day, mid-afternoon, my phone starts blowing up. When I say blowing up, I mean like I was getting so many calls that every time I answered one, I'd have multiple missed calls and voicemails and text messages as soon as I got off. It took a while to figure it out, but he had put up multiple Craigslist ads all around the country for everything from severely discounted vehicles, great deals on fake apartments, and even mail for male casual encounters. My phone was literally unusable. Could not dial it because of constant incoming calls, texts, and quite a few dick pics. I had to borrow my girlfriend's phone to file a police report so they could get him to stop. After a little time, the cop calls me back with him on the line, and he basically gets us both to say we'll stop, like a couple of kids getting a warning from an elementary teacher or something. And that was the end, or so I thought. A couple months go by and the calls start again. Again, I call the police, but this time they're less than helpful, basically asking me if I can prove that it's him. I thought I might need to take legal action to get it to stop, so I requested a copy of the police report. The copy they sent me included his address by mistake. Should have been redacted. Booyah! That Friday night I posted a ton of fake Craigslist ads from a burner account about giving away tons of household items, bikes, kids' stuff, clothes, furniture, appliances, you name it. The ads had a story about moving out of the country and needing it all gone ASAP. I put his address in the ads and said I'd be putting everything on the driveway at 5:30 a.m. sharp Saturday morning, and if the item they wanted wasn't out yet, to knock on the door. He only lived about 20 minutes away from me, and I couldn't miss this show, so I got to his house and parked about a block up at 5 a.m. on the dot. Took the ads down to cover my tracks, and just waited for people to start showing up. It was like Black Friday on steroids. People with pickup trucks and trailers, box trucks, and plenty of people with regular cars, too. It was gridlock for a few blocks around his house. People honking like it was rush hour. His lawn looked like a ducking concert, there were so many people. Him and his chick were going absolutely ape crap. His neighbors were waking up and yelling out their windows. I could hear his chick screaming, "I told you not to duck with that dude again." The funniest thing I've ever seen. I was dead. Never got any retaliation. I guess he got the message. He got me pretty good, but I got the better of him in the end. The next one is a malicious compliance story. When I was in high school, I was part of a punk band that played regular gigs at a few venues around the city. We regularly opened for touring bands that came into town. I guess we were a bit of a novelty act since we were all around 15 years old and put on a good show. Well, part of being an interesting punk band is having a wild appearance, and as such, I always had some kind of brightly colored mohawk or spikes on my head. So one day, in the middle of the school year, the school sent home an updated dress code notice that now included no unnatural hair colors or styles, and a few other annoying changes that were specifically directed at me and my friends. At the time, my hair was actually bleach blonde, so technically I didn't have to do anything. But when I got home, I remembered that I had a ridiculously plush curly gray granny wig that I had bought as a gag. That's when my devious little mind had a great idea. The next day at school, I showed up in combat boots with a plaid suit and my hilarious granny wig. During first period, I had a really nice teacher who complimented my humor. Second period, I had a real hard-ass teacher who I knew must have had something to do with the dress code change because we had actually argued about my appearance before. So I showed up early to class and took a seat. Class was about to start and the teacher walked in, got everyone quiet and at attention. Then I noticed him notice me. He called me out. "Yes, sir?" I asked. "Take that ridiculous thing off your head right now," I complied, and as I took it off, my freshly dyed bright blue mohawk sprang up. The look on his face was priceless, and the whole class was stifling their laughter. We all knew he was going to have to choose. He just tightened his mouth, shook his head, and said, "Ugh, whatever." I got to do this with every hard teacher for the rest of my day, forcing them to make the choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. Inevitably, it seems I was able to make the rule unenforceable, and after a few weeks, other kids were showing up with unnatural hair as well. No one gave us much resistance after that. The next one is an entitled people story. I call my stepdaughter's entitled boyfriend Wreck-It Ralph. No relation to the trademarked cartoon, just a coincidental name. He has a tendency to break, ruin, or tear up everything he touches. My stepdaughter, who is actually a sweet and endearing young woman whom I love dearly, has, like many young women with self-esteem issues, allowed herself to be led astray by WIR. In the year they've been together, she's lost everything. But at 23, she is old enough to learn her lessons without us parents coming to her rescue until she gets rid of WIR and gets back on track. When they first got together, they lived with her dad and me for a few months. It very quickly became apparent that WIR had a chip on his shoulder when it came to me. He would carry tales to my husband, causing us to argue, despite my husband telling WIR many, many times that it was my house, and everything in it was mine. WIR would keep asking my husband, not me, if he could have this or that, and that's if he asked at all. They kept getting more and more animals, despite our telling them no more. Neither of them was taking care of the ones they had, buying dog or cat food, or cat litter. My husband and I were responsible for all of that. They weren't picking up the messes, and they weren't training them, allowing them to tear up our belongings. Marijuana is legal in our state, and there is a dispensary in our town. The only work these two would do is door delivery, her job with the daily payout, just to get enough money for WIR to make a purchase at the dispensary every day, along with eating at fast food restaurants. WIR's chip on his shoulder when it came to me was such that they brought my husband a soda one night, walking in the back door right past me, calling out loudly, "We got you, your favorite soft drink," to my husband in the living room with zero inclusion of me. Another example is my stepdaughter asking if she could use my debit card to go get drinks for the four of us at a local convenience store one hot day, while my husband and I were unloading stuff from the truck and trailer in the backyard, which was no problem. However, when I checked my account, they had spent $20 on food for WIR without asking. The final straw came when I told them they had to replace the bedroom door their dog had chewed the bottom out of, and I refused to allow the pit bull mix they wanted to rescue, even though it had a bite history, to enter my home. They moved to my stepdaughter's mother's home at that point. During their time there, my stepdaughter kept getting tickets in her car, which is only registered to my husband. They weren't paying their insurance. I had bought my stepdaughter her own policy and paid the startup out of my own money when they lived with us, and didn't pay the plate renewal. Now her license is suspended, and it cost my husband and me $600 to get the plates. Again in his name only, unsuspended. Plus, they had damaged the car, and it needed repairs, so he took it from them. Before her license was suspended, but after the police took the plates from her car, my husband let her use his truck, which was on my insurance policy. WIR drove it even though he has no license, and he blew the motor in it. It is now sitting and can't be used. I told my husband I would put the car on my insurance for him, but only if he drove it. If he returned it to them, I was canceling the insurance, which I've stood by. Nevertheless, WIR called daily, demanding my husband return the car to them once it was legal and fixed. After 3 weeks, my husband finally said, "Look, you dumbass. I don't know what it is that you think you're trying to accomplish here, but you're not demanding anything from me, and you're not getting the car back. I may have originally bought it for her before she got with you, but it is my car in my name, and I'm keeping it in lieu of the truck you ruined. Don't call me again about the car, got it?" We had been hearing of ongoing disputes between my husband's ex and WIR. Things got so bad that WIR told my husband's ex-wife to pack her crap and get the F out of her own home. Another time he told her to shut the F up and remember who she's talking to. So we all decided it was time to let our daughter hit rock bottom since she wasn't seeing how WIR had taken her from being a sweet, lovable, well-liked, and responsible girl in a college nursing program to this person with a criminal history and no prospects at the moment. My husband's ex-wife moved in with her boyfriend, turning the power off at the home she had been renting, and told her former landlord, whom she was actually longtime friends with, that she wouldn't allow it to affect their friendship if he evicted them for squatting, since neither were on her lease to begin with. When my stepdaughter called wanting to come back, my husband told her she could, but WIR could not. Now they are staying at a homeless shelter in the town where WIR's mom lives, and WIR's mom won't let them live with her either. We hate to see her go through this, but this entitled WIR she won't let go of has really brought her down, and she can do so much better. This guy actually told us once he couldn't work at a factory that he interviewed at because it was climate controlled and his heart condition won't allow that. And then he argued with me and my husband that climate controlled meant controlled by the climate, so it was hot in summer and cold in winter. We haven't seen him hold a job or do anything useful and productive since they've been together, just demanding from and using the people who love the girl he's become a Klingon to. The next one is an entitled parent story. One of my pet rats suddenly became very ill. I rushed to the vets on public transport with another rat in the carrier to keep him company. The ill rat was admitted to the hospital overnight, and the outlook is not good. It's likely he will need to be euthanized. I was very upset when I got back on the train, and as I got on, a mother and daughter, around 5 years old, gasped in delight at seeing a pet in a carrier. I started ugly crying when I sat down and clutched the carrier. The mother and daughter sat next to me, and the mother joyfully encouraged her daughter to ask me what pet I had. I started crying harder and said, "I'm sorry, I'm not in the mood to chat. I will need to have an animal euthanized. You can have a look at my rat if you want." I turned away, put the carrier on the seat next to me, and cried more. A few seconds later, the woman encouraged her child to open the carrier to play with my rat. Okay, he's a big softy, but the train was stressing him out. I pulled the carrier away and said, "Please don't do that." The woman pulled her daughter back and said loudly and passive-aggressively, "Wasn't that lady rude?" The child started laughing at me. I'm listening to sad music, nose running, openly sobbing, while this woman and her kid insult me. Screw you! Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.